Who does not know me yet? My name is Philip Close Moreiro, and I am in charge for our South American business, including 3 Rödl partner offices in Brazil, and the coordination of our GPSA partners in South America. Rödl partner, as you know, is the biggest German professional service firm, and we are one firm with around 110 offices in 50 countries. However, we serve clients already in 125 countries, basically all over the world with German professional services. In the country where we don't have own offices yet, this is done in coordination with our trusted German Professional Service Alliance members, which will today be introduced for Argentina and Uruguay, and which builds kind of the outer ring, if you like, around our one firm. Right now, I'm sitting together with our assistant, Tamiris de Borba, in our digital studio, Sao Paulo, based in our regional head office, right next to the German Chamber of Commerce in Sao Paulo. And our flight today will take us to Argentina, South, and Uruguay, 2 worlds, 1 river apart. Can we move on to the next slide? Thank you. Maybe again, I hear background noise. Can you please go all on mute? Maybe Cristiano, mute everybody for the moment. Thank you. And for the speakers, maybe it's important you stay on mute while others speak. It's because otherwise you have always this interference. It's so many panelists, yeah. And then for the participants, you guys are automatically muted throughout the flight, so to say. But you can participate with us, yeah. You see here the panel that you as a panelist see. And basically, what you can do is you can ask questions throughout the web conference at any time, and we will see it here, and Tamiris will pick it up for our Q&A at the end. Yeah? We will get all your questions here, and we will, of course, then as time allows it, we have reserved 20-30 minutes at the end, yeah, for Q&A. So please actively participate. I will also reinforce this throughout the web conference. We still have people coming in. We are already above 120 participants right now. Again, please ask questions to the panelists throughout the web conference. We pick it up there. Then our agenda is fully packed. That's why I make it very brief. Yeah. First of all, I would like to really thank all our sponsors for the event. Latin America Verein, represented by Judith here in Hamburg. AHK Argentina, represented by Barbara Conner in Buenos Aires, and the AHK Uruguay, represented by basically Willy, the Pucci from BARDA. He's the president of the chamber, and Fernando Scheich, who's the vice president of the chamber. Yeah? So we really have a first-class panel lineup today. Again, as we speak, participants tune still in. We expect roughly about 200 registered guests, so we really have a high demand. So now let's go right into it. It's my honor to hand over the word to Judith Eckert, who is based as regional manager for exactly these countries, Argentina, Uruguay, in the Latin America Verein in Hamburg. Ladies and gentlemen, fasten your seatbelts and enjoy the flight that will take approximately 90 minutes in total. Judith, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Philip. Buenos dias, bom dia, and hello to everybody. As Philip already said, my name is Judith Eckert, and I'm the regional manager for Argentina and Uruguay at Latin America Verein, the Association for Latin America. We're very happy to support again, and now for the 3rd time, Rödl & Partners South America event series. Allow me to say just a few words about us. This Association for Latin America is located in Hamburg in the north of Germany, and since more than 100 years, we support, advise, and connect our members on expanding and establishing their business activities in the region. We organize different events in close cooperation with our members, like in this case, Rödl & Partner, but also with public institutions and expert associations. Our leading event is the annual Latin America Day, which just took place 3 weeks ago. and for the first time online. And if you're interested, you can find a follow-up of these 2 days conference on our website. It's www.latinamerikaverein.de. And during the Latin America Day, of course, also Argentina and Uruguay were represented. For example, we had a speech of Argentina's President Alberto Fernandez, and also several speakers from the business side from Argentina and Uruguay. So, and today we focus especially on these two neighboring countries, which in fact couldn't be more different. And Argentina, the country with maybe today's biggest political, social and economical challenges in the whole region. And on top, one of the actual COVID-19 hotspots on the one hand, and Uruguay on the other hand, known for its institutional and economical stability and its good way so far through the pandemic. I'm looking forward very much to this discussion, and I'm sure we will get excellent information on these two countries from our today's panelists. And with this, I hand over back to Philip. Thank you and enjoy.
Excellent. Thanks, Judith, for the small intro. Now we come to the main intro. We have one really nice expert about Argentina and Uruguay, based in Paris, special guest from Paris, Carlos Vinograd. He's currently professor and research fellow at the Paris School of Economics. Among others, and holds also associate professor at University Evry Paris Saclay. He has received several international scholarships and awards. In 2004, he was awarded the Academic Merit Award from the French government. From 1999 to 2002, he was the Secretary of State for Competition, Regulation and Consumer Affairs, the government of Argentina, and is in charge of the coordination from Ministry of Economics and Finance, again, Argentina, of the Mercosur macroeconomics initiatives. He has developed consulting activities for multilateral institutions, governments, and the corporate sector on macroeconomic strategy, mergers and acquisitions, litigation, antitrust and regulation. Carlos has taught at universities in France, UK, Argentina, and Brazil. We're very much looking forward to your presentation, Carlos. Please turn on the presentation, cameras, and let's go. Thank you.
I said, nicht sprechen Sie Deutsch. I hope for the next time I will do better. For now, it's going to be in English. And I want to thank first to Rödl and partners, and particularly to Philip and the help of Tamiris in this last run to this conference. And the discussion, the short discussion, will be into a sort of a family of people, because Argentines and Uruguayans are very hard to disentangle if you see them, if you hear them, but they are so different, and they sometimes they don't even know themselves they are so different. So let's go and start with a short film. Please, Tamiris. Go forward. Next. Move. Okay, so I'm going to discuss 4 issues basically, and have an intermediate conclusion, and then I will leave a more detailed analysis for Q&As. But the 4 issues is health economics. In these days, we cannot analyze macroeconomics, microeconomics, and alternative scenarios in the global economy without getting into some basic health economics, and I'm going to synthesize some elements in this first transparency. Then I will follow with a comparative public health response at the global scale, and in particular looking at Argentina and Uruguay, and finally the more traditional focus on the economic numbers. And at the end I will conclude with institutional and political argument. Well, first, this transparency is a resume of what we are living in, and synthesizes the trade-off between health and economics, and in some cases the correlation. You have a number of countries, developed countries and emerging countries. In the vertical axis, you have the growth rate of GDP, the growth of the economies in the vertical axis. In the horizontal axis, you have death by million inhabitants. So the more you go down to the southeast, the worse off you are. Meaning a country like Peru in the extreme right down has a very strong contraction and a very high death rate, is by today the highest death rate in the recorded numbers. If you go left and up, you have the best economic performance and the best sanitary performance. What about Uruguay and Argentina? Uruguay is in the middle to the left. That means a very balanced and among the best, or the best in Latin America and one of the best in the Western Hemisphere in terms of contraction. It's around, the forecast for this year is around 4% contraction in GDP, with a very, very low death rate that is among the successes. And I will insist, so far, because this epidemic can derail in a very quick mode, and we are seeing it in Europe these days. What is Argentina today? Argentina started, I don't have time to look at the film, I'm gonna look at the photo this week. This is just a few days ago. Argentina started with very good numbers in terms of health, but an evolving problem, and I'm not gonna go into the details now. Argentina is now into the tragedy region that we are gonna deepen in the next transparencies, with the highest, some of the highest contraction in GDP, as well as going into the highest death rates in the region. It's just biting the knees of Brazil and Brazil, Peru, etc. So next. Next. So here, what do we have? We have a pure sanitary consideration. In the vertical axis, we have total death per million inhabitants, and in the vertical and in the horizontal, the number of cases. The number of cases is a very imperfect number because it depends very much on the quality of testing. But again, I set in the upper side tragedies, in particular by the number of deaths, but death rate in the epidemic, the economics of the epidemic in these times. And Uruguay, if you see, is in the extreme low side with a number of other countries like Australia, China, Indonesia, New Zealand, and in general, the Asian countries, but India are in this extreme left down. And Argentina is entering recently the tragedy square. So successes so far: South Korea, New Zealand, Germany, Uruguay. Possible success, I'm not going to discuss, and it's not the topic today. Africa, with all the difficulties of statistical register in Africa, but this is related to the structure of the disease, younger people, and less dense places. Next. Sanitary response. Here you see the testing exercise up to very recent data in early October, and you see also in a global perspective the cases of Argentina and Uruguay. Uruguay is in the middle of the road at the international scale. Argentina is a low tester, but in particular is a very late tester. I'm not going into the details, maybe we can discuss later, but when you test a lot but late, the epidemia develops and the capacity to contagion, to trace and restrain diminishes strongly. But the issue is positivity. If you look at the testing, it's not enough because it depends on the number of positive cases. Next. This is a word map of testing, and you see the difference in positivity rate of test across the globe. And again, Uruguay has less than 1% positivity test. It means that of 100 tests done, 1 is detected positive. Argentina is in these days between 50 and 70%, which presumes that the degree of infection is much, much higher. And that's why the testing has to be complemented with this. And that shows state capacity and is an indicator of other elements of state intervention. Next. And here an indicator of lockdown. This is an indicator that I'm not going to detail called the stringency index. It's a combination of elements that show the degree of compliance to lockdowns. If lockdowns are voluntary or mandatory, it doesn't matter, you test the degree of restriction in economic activities. And as you see, Uruguay has a much lower, and as time goes, much lower degree of stringency. And Argentina has the longest lockdown in action, and the number of cases doesn't stop growing, is the green columns on underneath. Next. What about the economics in the midst of the epidemic? Next. Next, please. Let's start with GDP per capita and inflation. Well, what we see in the last 40 years is that Argentina, that was once not only of the top 5 richest economies in per capita in the 1920s at the global scale, was still 30, 40, 50 years ago, one of the richest in per capita terms in Latin America. What do we see? Stagnation. Through booms and busts, a lot of volatility. It's a long period of very low per capita growth. What is the case of Uruguay in this Latin planet? Uruguay has a moderate regular growth in the last 20 years. It's not an Irish tiger, but it's a stable, moderate, regular growth. Next. Another indicator that in the world is not very relevant these days. We talk more about deflation and how to reshuffle the world economy, but Argentina stays with very high levels of inflation. All the Latin American region has a long history of inflation, but as you see here, most countries but Argentina and Venezuela keep Venezuela in levels of hyperinflation. It's another animal I'm not going to discuss here, but Argentina has resumed high inflation, is in the 40 to 60 inflation rate. Uruguay is in the lows, but is the high relative to the other countries of the region, but in a very controllable and manageable way. It's between 6, 7, and 10%, while the region is between 2 and 4%. Next. Just one comment before going to the fiscal capacity to respond to crisis, that is this transparency. In the case of Argentina, if today it's 40 to 60, and the forecast for next year, if you take a number of consensus forecasting, will give you again between 40 and 60. The volatility of this forecast for the next year, in my view, is extreme. It can go very easily to very unstable scenarios. In terms of fiscal capacity, here again, we put, and you see it in the center, Argentina and Uruguay, which are our focus, in a world view. In the vertical axis, what do we have? Fiscal deficit, and in the horizontal axis, sorry, the inverse. In the vertical axis, we have debt, public debt, and in the horizontal axis, we have the budget deficit. What do we see? The extreme right up is the more dangerous geography. High debt, high deficit. The extreme low down place, low debt, low deficit, is the more virtuous place, and you will see a number of Latin American countries in this area, as well as other countries in the region. Argentina is more fragile, with a high deficit and a high debt. Uruguay is somehow in the middle. It has to be careful in the management of its public finance, but it has a very manageable situation as long as it doesn't commit excesses. Next. Here we see public debt, and you see that Uruguay in the Americas is in the mid-range with Mexico and Ecuador, with 67% to GDP. Argentina is higher. One comment with Argentina. Argentina has all its debt dollar denominated, which means that when there are speculative attacks like the current, the debt in dollars, the debt increases as a share of GDP. So it's extremely sensible to exchange rate, which is much less the case in Uruguay, that in the last 15 years has managed to have even half of its debt in domestic currency, which is a trend in many Latin American countries. Then I can discuss the advantages of this portfolio diversification in terms of risk. Next. Budget deficit, as almost all the countries in the global scene, the response to the crisis has been a strong increase in fiscal deficits, and Argentina and Uruguay has done as much as the others. But you can see that in Uruguay that the deficit was already in a level that should show a path of reduction for sustainable debt, was forced to increase, but to 5.8, whereas Argentina, that was almost in balance after a very, very sharp reduction in 18-19, will reach close to 8%, with a capacity to finance this deficit that is extremely restricted. Next. Current account balance, the relation with the rest of the world. Argentina, due to the severe contraction, has strongly reduced the current account balance that led to the speculative attack of 2018 and the consequences that we all heard in international markets. Uruguay, that had a pretty balanced current account, will suffer, in particular in 21, because the season of tourist visits of 2020 was before COVID exploded. So Uruguay will suffer in the current account this year strongly, but I would assume that this is a transitory problem, that when the situation will tend to normalize, it will recoup stability. At the same time, one has to recall that Uruguay doesn't have much problems of access to capital markets. In the middle of COVID, Uruguay managed to place with 2.5% rate bonds, public bonds. So it shouldn't have a difficulty to sail this transitory problem. Next. International reserves. Argentina is under a constant speculative attack, and as of today, net international disposable reserves are technically negative. Gross international reserves are positive, but that explains the tight capital control that the government of Argentina has in place. In the case of Uruguay, the level of reserve gives strong firepower, and that's what the market see, why the central bank can manage in a very comfortable way the tensions at the beginning of the government in exchange markets. Next. And I will finalize this presentation. The rest of the technicalities are left for Q&A, with one basic element to understand, compare, and forecast this economy. And in a Clintonian way, I will not say it's the economy, I will say it's politics, stupid, and institutions. Next. Two words, somebody put this nice name, a river apart. If we take both in a nutshell, Argentina and Uruguay, Argentina is a country with a wide range of investment opportunities in agriculture, in energy, in knowledge industry, with good human capital. But the polarization of the economic agendas between political blocs is too extreme, and that leads to very high discount rates that depress investment. Extreme macroeconomic instability and rather high regulatory uncertainty are the underpinnings of this high discount rate. Shouldn't an investor ignore Argentina? No, it depends on the type of investor. For resilient, risk-loving investors, distress is an opportunity, but the timing of exit is the crucial decision. Uruguay. Fewer investment opportunities, but robust institutions and wider common agendas between opposition political blocs. That leads to what the market signals to us, low discount rates. However, if Uruguay is another galaxy compared to its neighbor cousin, macroeconomic stability requires public finance sustainability, while regulatory and micro reform are needed to boost growth. Without comparing the two, for moderate risk-averse investor, a good shore to explore the beaches of Uruguay. Argentina polarization versus Uruguayan consensus on macroeconomic stability, property rights, regulation, and international strategies explains why Argentina, with tremendous potential, has very high discount rates for investment, and Uruguay, with fewer opportunities, shows constant low discount rates. Thank you. The rest is to come.
Perfect, Carlos. Thanks very much. Yeah, here again, two words, a river apart. A wonderful summarizing slide here. Leading in also on our panel discussion now. Carlos will stay here kindly. Professor Carlos Vinogradov will stay for questions that you may have. So please use that opportunity. You can, again, like we showed at the beginning, you can just use your panel chat, yeah, to ask questions to Carlos and other panelists throughout the web conference. Again, Carlos, thanks very much for a nice intro. So let's get right into Argentina. Yeah, based in Buenos Aires, we have Karl Moises, economic and political analyst, journalist for economy and finance, representative and correspondent for the Germany Trade and Invest, the GTAI, or GTAI, the Economic Development Agency for the Federal Republic of Germany, more than 30 years observing Argentina and the neighboring countries like Uruguay. Long-time economics and finance correspondent for South America with German daily at the Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung. Very warm welcome, Karl. And the first question I would like to ask to you, similar like my current home, Brazil, yeah, Argentina does not get much good press lately. Yeah? Being based in Buenos Aires, Argentina, how do you see the political macroeconomic framework in general? And what are the biggest chances and what are the most relevant risks for investors that you see in Argentina?
Okay. Hello to everybody, and thanks a lot for the invitation. And it's difficult for me after such an excellent presentation as we just heard from Carlos to add some things, but I'll try to complement and focus perhaps a little bit on the short-term perspective. I think that Carlos explained very well how we got to this point, and he said as well that even if the climate, the investment climate and the macroeconomic situation is very difficult in Argentina, and it has been so for decades. It's not something we are living for the first time. I'm in my 30 years here, I lived through 3 major crises and a few smaller ones as well. Let me start with the German presence here and the European culture. It's a very European in business climate and culture here in Argentina. We have a very strong presence by German companies for a very long time. Some of them are here for 100 years, and all these times they have learned to adapt to the situations and to focus on what is very important in such an environment as flexibility in first place. And you have a lot of cases, big companies, small companies as well. Later on, we will perhaps hear from Martin Jepsen, who is working with a lot of small and medium enterprises here, that they, in all these crises, they have done pretty well. And it's not, it's from an investor, from a finance investor, it's perhaps what Carlos Wienerwart asked, you have to see when you get in, when you get out. But the real investors have been here for a long time, and they will stay. I'm very sure that if we don't go into some totally disruptive development in Argentina, that means disruptive of the institutions and democracy, things like that. I think that we will go on, and we have to ride this tiger, or better say the puma. Well, the risk in the short place is obviously the COVID situation. Argentina is now the hotspot. Carlos said a lot about it. I don't have to go into more details. We have the same situation here. In a few weeks, we will have the same numbers like in Brazil or in Chile in the health crisis, but we have a double the dip in the GDP this year. And what is more important, we don't have the perspective of a very quick and strong recovery. I think that what the best we can expect is that Argentina stabilizes the macroeconomic situation, and I think that the talks with the IMF have a very important role in this moment. And we had last week we had the mission from the IMF here and their statement, and later on IMF director Georgieva said that what's all about is to design a roadmap where Argentina wants to go. And we have a lot of political uncertainty here, and we are going to a strong devaluation of the peso. The only question is when it will happen, but not if it will happen. So what we have to see is whether these talks with the IMF and with a government coalition that is very heterogeneous, very divided in itself, if these talks can produce a strong agreement, a good agreement, so this could stabilize the economy and go lead Argentina back to.
Let me ask you a straightforward question here.
Okay.
What is Argentina's, in your view, based as an expert based in Buenos Aires, what is Argentina's main problem? Why can't it solve its almost permanent crisis situation? Is it more based on the politics that causes it, or Is it also economic, or how are both factors interrelated and connected to each other? Please, can you elaborate on this one?
I get back to Carlos. He said it. It's about politics and institutions. That in the long term, I think the institution building and to make better the investment climate for private companies would be the most important. In the short term, we have the political conflict in the ruling coalition. We have a moderate Peronist as a president who has been very critical of Christina Kirchner, who now is the vice president, but she's the leader of the political coalition. And nobody knows where they want to go. It's pretty clear now that Christina Kirchner is calling the shots. That she has the power, and the president does not. President Fernandez does not have the guts to make himself independent from his vice president and to look for a coalition, perhaps for better relations with the opposition. And that's something many people, myself included, thought about, but it's out of the question now. But we don't see exactly how this will play out. It could well be that Christina Kirchner agrees to some kind of orthodox policy backed by the IMF, but it is also possible that she will opt for some strategy that would lead Argentina to a development more like Venezuela. Basically, in essence, the problem is that you have for decades a vicious circle of economic and political factors that is leading the development into a self-reinforcing downward spiral, and we have to interrupt this.
Downward spiral, I will call also vicious circle, and that Professor Carlos said rightly, it's politics and institutions stupid.
Yeah,
I like that one. That pretty much summarizes the whole thing. I mean, on the positive note, is there some light at the end of the tunnel, considering that Argentina and Brazil are interrelated neighbors? I mean, they have the power to drag them down to hell together, and now we see the opposite, that Brazil is recovering a bit. At least from the economic side. How do you see that impact? Can that help Argentina?
Yes, it can, and it will. It can help a lot because Brazil is, in normal times, it's the most important trading partner of Argentina. Now, because of COVID, China is taking the lead for the moment. China is the other most important trading partner. But with Brazil, there is a very strong interconnection in the industry. The Argentine industry, basically, what it is exporting, it's selling to Brazil and other neighboring countries, but basically to Brazil. We have the problem that the Brazilian real is pretty weak, and the official peso rate is rather strong. So there is a currency misalignment, but in the end, what is most important for Argentina is that Brazil gets going. The currency relation is not so important because there is a lot of complementary lineup between the companies that in many cases are present in Brazil and in Argentina as well. So they are complementary, and take Volkswagen, for instance. They just started production of a new SUV, and they will sell it not only in Argentina, but basically in Brazil and other parts of the region. So if Brazil gets going, this would be a very big help for Argentina. And we have another point in the good demand for Argentine products in the export markets. We have good prices. It's all about politics to resolve these internal products and to take to profit from what is offered on the table for Argentina and the world.
Excellent. Thanks for your contribution, Karl. Yeah, again, questions to Karl Moses from the GTAE here in the chat function in your panel. We will pick it up at the end. Karl also will stay as currently until the Q&A session at the end. So now we stay in Buenos Aires, Argentina. We move on to Barbara Conner, Executive Vice President from the AHK Argentina. It's my pleasure and honor to have her also on the panel today. The German Argentine Chamber of Commerce and Industry, of course, AHK is the German abbreviation. In this function since 2011, before 8 years responsible for the North and Latin American activities of the DIHK in Berlin, the headquarters, so to say, of the German chambers. Yeah. Studied economics and political science at the University of Cologne, Spain, and Argentina. Barbara, so you see hopefully some opportunities for the digital world, for the digitization and Industry 4.0 in Argentina. Is it something that maybe has been pushed a bit because of, let's say, the COVID push into the digital world? How do you see that, Barbara?
Thank you very much, Philip, for the invitation. Hello to everybody. Yes, actually, as despite of all what we heard about Argentina, you always have a very heterogeneous picture, and Argentina is always worth to see the movie and not only the photo. And actually, what happened in Argentina with the digitization in consequence of the pandemic situation and in consequence of Corona is what happened to the whole world. It served like a booster. And I think, we as a chamber, we are already working on this issue as one of our focus points since several years, because there's a very fertile ground to elaborate on this relation, and there's plenty of business opportunities. Why? Because on the one hand side, Argentina has a very young, a very creative, and a very in a regional benchmark, a very quite good, well-educated population. They are very somebody else already mentioned it. They're very flexible. They like to learn, and so this is a very fertile ground on the one side. And on the other side, Germany sells. Germany still is a very good brand, especially when it comes to know-how in engineering and in technology. So, and the German Mittelstand has, from the company's point of view, there are lots of best cases on behalf of German SMEs regarding the implementation of 4.0 processes that can serve as an example for Argentine companies also. So there is and the main reason is that there is a huge necessity for Argentine productive sector to innovate and to become more productive, because they need to become more competitive on an international scale. As we heard before from both Carlos and Carl, Argentina really needs hard currency and US dollars, and this is you can get with exports. So they have to become more productive, more competitive on an international scale. And I think that Argentina now is really on a turning point from this. They really have to decide if in 10 years they want to belong to the group of countries that are on a technological scale in a competitive way and integrated in international value chains, or if they are not. So there is a very fertile ground, and there's a very complementary relationship between Germany and Argentina in this regard. So there are plenty of opportunities for German companies, but as we already heard, Argentina is not an easy market. It never has been an easy market, actually, but it always have been a market with very good margins for the companies that come here. And especially German SMEs, they should know that they have lots of chances in Argentina, but they need a very good partner to accompany them, and from the beginning of the idea they have to come to Argentina. May it be a Rödl partner, may it be a very good lawyer, and of course the chamber. So this is maybe what the actual situation is regarding the digitalization in Argentina.
Perfect. This is also, as you have here said, it's very similar to Brazil, a very, let's say, advanced level investor market. I think that Argentina and Brazil are very much in common. What is the mood here in your, let's say, German chamber board and presidency? How let's say, how they see the situation and how they concretely, let's say, what kind of risk they manage or being prepared for, basically to prepare the companies for the next 12 months, let's say. What is, let's say, the outlook of them, short-term, mid-term, for the next 12 months?
Yes, since the Corona breakout in Argentina, we organized as a chamber on a regular basis a CEO roundtable for German companies. So we always had this kind of temperature to feel how business atmosphere is, because one thing is the numbers and the macroeconomic context, and the other thing is how business actually are going. And the mood is better than we could think of regarding the macroeconomic situation and political situation in Argentina and all of the other markets regarding the pandemic. And so we realized just 2 weeks ago an express survey among the top 30 German companies in Argentina. And our first question was obviously, how do they assess the current situation? And almost 20% evaluated the current situation was good, while about a quarter of all the companies assessed it as bad. Anyway, almost 60%, 57% still say their business situation today is satisfactory. And then we asked which business development the company expects for the next 12 months. And that was quite a third of all companies responded better, about equal, and worse respectively. It's 1/3, 1/3, and 1/3. But when it comes to the question, when do they expect economy in Argentina economy to recover, the answers are a lot more heterogeneous. Only 14% are expecting recovery next year. Almost a third are estimating a recovery in 2022. But more than half of the respondents assume that economic recovery will take longer. So longer, just in 2023, the recovery will come, think more than half of the companies. So it's not so surprising that only 5% of companies plan to increase their investments within the next 12 months, but 43% are expecting a decline in their investments. So this is quite preoccupating, but maybe it's a little calming when it comes to the question regarding the employment development in the next 12 months, because 60%, more than 60%, are planning to keep the same labor force, local labor force, as they have today. So as we see, Argentina is always a picture that, as I said before, that we have a lot of chances, there are lots of resources, there's a lot of potential, but you have to be really very cautious, because regarding the volatility of the market and of the macroeconomic indicators, it's quite hard to make even a short-term budget, or not just to talk about mid-term planning or a long-term investment. So you really need a good partner to do this.
Many thanks, Barbara, for those insights from the Argentinian Chamber Board and Presidency, because this is very interesting again. Just to put the parallel to Brazil, as I said, the perception about the markets Argentina, Brazil, from a European standpoint, if you look only solely at the press, everybody gets worried. Yeah? But if you have on-site, yeah, the reports from the companies, as you said rightly, it's the same picture here. We did the same survey here, basically, and the mood is actually cautious optimistic. Yeah? So no, this is the discrepancy between
only the companies of medical devices, for example, that have good growth rates, but there are also companies that are providers for other industry sectors. So, but I think it's interesting to see also the SME part.
Perfect, and that's then Martin will a bit elaborate on the SME part also. But the main point is this, yeah. Even the industry, remember, we in the very beginning, we did a webinar, should I stay or should I go, about Argentina and Brazil when COVID started, yeah. And of course, we came to the conclusion, stay, yeah, because again, even the so-called, what we call COVID industry losers, yeah, potential COVID industry losers, let's say not pharmaceutical, not medical technology, not e-commerce, but let's say the classical Mittelstand, yeah, let's say automotive, machinery, even them, I think in both countries, doing better than expected. And they overcome it. We can say now a couple of months later, yeah, down the road, when we have already a bit more fundament to say this, they're doing better than expected. Yeah, even the so-called industries where everybody was worried, yeah, that they will now get a big hit, yeah, in these markets. The managers, if you talk to them, they are getting cautious, optimistic that they survive this crisis better than expected. And this is, let's say, a good positive note we can continue. And now we would like to interact a bit with you in the audience. We have Tamiris, our in German would say Pollfee, in English would be Poll Fairy. Yeah? She will now activate a poll prepared by the German Chamber here. I think which will also go a bit more on the industries, industry perspective. Let's have a look together. Tamiris.
Hello everyone.
You're muted, Tamiris.
Thank you, Philip.
No, it doesn't work. Don't worry. Just show the poll. I will, for the moment, we fix. And for the next poll, we fix the technical. Sorry for that. Yeah. Maybe you can just show the poll. I think I will be in a position to explain it. Okay. I think everybody should see now in front of them a poll question. In which sectors do you see the best opportunities in Argentina? And the options that you have, it's a multiple choice, is agro business, construction, energy, processing industry, and services. So we would like kindly to ask your participation, and you can go in the poll section of your panel that you have. You can answer this. So basically, we wait a bit for the answer, and in parallel, we fix here the microphone of Tamiris.
Maybe now I'm back.
So the question is, in which sectors do you see the best opportunities in Argentina? Agro businesses, construction, energy, processing industry. So now I need to see myself. How can I see how much participants we have already? I think that's it. Now, Tamiris, can you show the result, please? For great. Barbara and Carl and maybe even Professor Carlos. What do you think about that result? Is that what you expected?
I would have expected the same picture, but I'd like to add that you shouldn't be so neglecting construction. Agribusiness obviously is the driver of the Argentine economy, but construction is just in the complicated times of today. There's flight from the peso to the dollar. The dollar isn't available, so they go to building materials, and construction activity is already in a V-shaped recovery. This is the only thing I would like to remark.
Excellent. Barbara, you would like to add something?
Yes, I'm quite surprised that there is so less interest in processing industries, because it's just about the digitization and automatization, and where really Argentina has a large, maybe not yet a demand. We're trying to generate the demand, but actually in these days, companies are fighting for their existence, and there are still a lot of problems to get finance for small, medium-sized companies. But there will be a huge demand in industry processing and everything what is digitalization and automatization. But this is like a transversal issue. So when it comes to, or when they I don't see anymore the results of agribusiness, but if you take the whole value chain of the agribusiness, there you have lots of possibilities. And so this is not so surprising. And maybe in energy, we also have to remark that it's not, Argentina has one of the best resources or biggest resources for some different kinds of renewable energies, wind energy, solar energy. So there is really plenty of possibilities.
Excellent. Thanks for the very good, helpful overview from Argentina. Yeah, let's switch sides of the river, yeah, to the other world. Yeah, it's my honor to introduce the current president of the German Chamber in Uruguay. Yeah, the German Uruguayan Commerce Industry Chamber, Rödl, and he's also the CEO of BADA Uruguay, and by formation a chemical engineer and an MBA. So he's a business and engineer. That's a very good combination. Yeah. Billy, an honor to have you on board here. My first question to you would be, how does the AHK, or the German Chamber of Uruguay, support its member in this, let's say, worldwide extraordinary crisis situation?
Okay, first of all, thank you very much for making me part of this event. I'm really pleased to be here. And going to your question, I mean, for everybody, this was really a strange situation, and everybody has to react according to a little bit of the feelings or what comes from inside. There was not a lot of time for planning. So we try to do what we think it was the best for us, and then we assume that it will be the best for the other people in our members. And so therefore what we try is to keep contact. Was the first thing we try, to give as much information as we can to our members, and try to help them in terms of course, all the measures we have to take for the COVID, but also try to keep active our part of making seminars and things to keep the business going, even if we are not working actively. But so we increase a lot our activities, and the reaction was very good. We were very happy that we have much more people attending our events during this pandemic, and actually we increases our members. This was something really unexpected, but we are more people being member of the chamber.
Excellent to hear that. Yeah, and before we come to your industry, specific industry, the leather industry, you have a good overview, of course, as a German chamber president currently about all industries. Yeah. So how do you see the temperature or the mood, as Barbara said it, yeah, in your German chamber board and presidency, how they see, let's say, the member firms, how they see the outlook?
Okay, we have more than 300 members, so we have a good sample of, let's say, of the companies and activities in the country, and therefore we see. I mean, I don't want to repeat what they have already said, but Uruguay is a mix of opportunities and challenges, and you see a lot of opportunities coming, some of them because of our strength, and some of them because of the weakness of our neighbors, which was already said, and therefore we more or less appears as the best of the class, but we have to be humble enough to know that probably we're not the best of the class, but our classmates are doing worse. So we have to take advantage at this point of this and see our strength. For instance, we have a big strength in energy, in sustainability. I think then Fernando will talk a little bit more about this, but this is really, I think today with the companies in Uruguay needs to work in what the world needs, and I think today Uruguay can offer to the world good education level, good communication, and and things like, as I said, everything regarding to sustainability, I think today is very important, and Uruguay still is, as our brand says there, Uruguay Natural, and that is our I think where we should focus in the future. And the companies, coming back to your question, the companies in the members of the chamber, more, I mean, you know that in this pandemic we have winners and losers, and some of them, you know, we know that they're doing very well, and other ones are suffering. So this is, I think, is nothing different to the rest of the world. We know that people in communication, health things related, and food and all these are probably the winners, and we know to have the losers. So this is more or less the same as the others.
Great overview. And I mean, as I said, the so-called COVID winner industries are, I think, worldwide more or less the same. Yeah, the same for the so-called old economy potential COVID losers. Yeah, I mean, in a narrow sense, the leather industry would be probably in the production old economy category. So that's now very interesting to see. How do you see, as a CEO of BADA, the COVID impact, and what is your specific outlook for it?
Yeah, our industry has a little bit of couple of challenges that were before the COVID. People were a little bit reluctant to use the use of leather for all these things of the animal healthcare and all this welfare, sorry, and which is not really the truth. But this is another discussion that I will take some more time to discuss about sustainability of leather towards sustainability and ecologic, as they want to show the plastic, which is the oceans are infected of plastic, and I cannot find a piece of leather in the ocean. But that's another discussion, that's it. But a part of that, the other challenge was when the economy stops or have a crisis, the first thing you cut off is the things that you don't need. I mean, food, for instance, is the last thing you stop buying, but a car, to change a car, is something that you would rather do. I mean, if there is a crisis this year, I wait for next year to change the car. What should I change it this year? It's still in a good condition. And so we were expecting really a problem in our industry, in the cars production. But surprisingly for us, I mean, for 2 months we were completely stopped. All the industry was stopped and was a disaster, what we expected. But after August, September, we start seeing a really picking up the industry, and the production levels we have today are similar to the time before the crisis, which was completely unexpected for us. There is a couple of explanations, and now I'm trying, instead of engineer, I would try to play the role of an economist, that they always explain what happened. and what probably happened is that the people, as they are not traveling, they are spending their money in cars and TVs and things that they give pleasure in somewhere somehow. But I mean, this money of the tourism is now moving to this, and we are seeing a lot of the sales in cars are going up more than we thought. And in the area, and now coming back to Argentina and Uruguay, in Argentina also there was a pickup in the sales of cars, a little bit due to this exchange rate, you know, that people prefer to have a car rather to have money somewhere that they don't know if they will have it tomorrow. And so therefore a thing with 4 wheels is better than, you know, bills. So this is I said we don't know what happened in the future. We are a little bit being careful. We cannot say this is completely recover and we are fine again. We are really touching down. Now we're going up, but I don't know what will happen in the future, and really wonder what would happen. Let's see.
I think that we all have in common. We call it flight by sight, yeah, day-to-day management of the company. It's the only way in this situation.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
As you mentioned, purchasing patterns. I just want to make a bit of anecdote again because people forgot about this. But I mean, look, our country where I'm coming from, the so-called countries of engineers, engineering, and thinkers and poets. And we did the first thing we had in our purchasing pattern was stocking up in toilet paper, which I still don't understand how that makes sense. But anyways, there was some surprises. In every country had some specifics. But Germany was, I think, on top of this one. But okay. The Bader subsidiary is located in Ciudad del Plata. How is the COVID situation there from your business?
Yes, we are here in Ciudad del Plata. It's a small city very close to Montevideo, and it's like a side city there. And but it's a little bit of a country city also, so it's more as a countryside people. And we were really worried about what will happen. Of course, first of all, for our people, what will happen if they have the COVID, and second, towards the business, what will happen if we have some cases, and how we manage, because we have to stop the production. And as you know, and in moments of crisis, if you lose business, you're dead. And so fortunately, as the rest of the country, and as already said, the situation is really fine. We didn't have any case here in this area, and we are very happy that also in some other cities nearby there were some cases, but a few. But fortunately, none of them was touching our employees. We have around 500 people here, and none of them has got any COVID. So far we are really happy, fine, and we are of course following all the masks, etc., all the distance, all what we put also in the production. We put some panels to stop to interfere with the people, and also we make some strategies in the shifts to avoid too many people in one shift. Let's say they all don't put too many eggs in the same basket, but in terms of people, don't put too many people in the same place at the same time. So if a case appears, then you know that which is the people that is they are affected.
Excellent. Thanks for the insight. And then, as far as I understand, you use your Bader subsidiary here close to Montevideo as a hub for the South American region. So how do you see the neighbor markets, Argentina?
That's it. Yeah, of course. As you said, yes, batteries have been installed here, have been established here 21 years ago, actually, to serve the Mercosur market, actually. And unfortunately, Mercosur is not as we would like to be. Still, there is not a completely open market as it is in Europe, but hopefully we will go there one day. And of course, as said, Uruguay has almost no production of cars, very small, and our main customers are in Argentina and Brazil. With this said, here also there are some things that we expected. In this moment. Of course, I don't want to go into the crisis and economic situation of Argentina and Brazil, because it was already said as nonsense. But going directly to our industry, I expected more production in Brazil due to the exchange rate now and the economic situation, and probably to decrease the production in Argentina and the investment. But fortunately also, and I still cross my fingers, in Argentina there are some players that are playing hard. For instance, Volkswagen in Argentina is playing very hard. Is investing a lot in the country, has invested around $800 million in this month, and which is really unexpected for us, but very fortunate that they did it, and that we are part of this supply chain, as being Volkswagen a part of our main customers worldwide, and we are serving Volkswagen a lot. Also, others are also doing good, as Renault, as Ford also. But I think today the key driver is Volkswagen. In Argentina, they are doing very well, and the new models they just launched, the Taos and the Nivus and the T-Cross that was last year, and the new T1, most probably they will put another car in the market. So they are very aggressive, and we are part of this. So Argentina, I said, unexpectedly good. Brazil, I thought it was going to have more production due to the good conditions to export, but so far I don't see it. I see a good level, but not so good, not as expected, I said. So we are really trying to be more and more aggressive in the market and to catch as much as more of market share as we can. This is our strategy, and we are working in this direction.
Excellent. Yeah, many thanks for this great insights from here close to Montevideo. Yeah. Maybe just to remind everybody, you have really the opportunity here to ask questions also, of course, to all the VIP speakers here. And panelists, please use the question tab, yeah, in your panel as participant to interact with us. We will also make polls after the Uruguayan blocks, yeah. And again, we will pick up the question at the end, yeah. Now,
okay.
Thanks, Willy, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah. Now let's go to Montevideo, to the neighbor city. I asked everybody how you want to be introduced by myself, and Fernando sent me main job enjoyer. Yeah. We can make a very short introduction, or we can read out all your titles, but I like it that main job enjoyer. So, but also founding partner, or founder and partner actually of the SEG Engineeria, vice president of the Uruguayan German Chamber of Commerce, here supporting Willy, and former president of AUDER. It's a renewable energy Uruguayan association, which also gives you a bit of insight already which industry we're talking about. And is president of holding SEG Green Power for renewable energy developments in Latin America. He's also partner at Global EV, electric trucks commercialization for Uruguay. We definitely should cover that topic also, yeah. And then angel investor at Maitre, a unique restaurant booking system. Sounds like a new economy to me, but we can also talk about that. And last but not least, a proud father of 3 kids and married for 16 years. So now I want to hear how you do all this and, and still enjoy your life. So
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming on board here, Fernando, today on the panel. Your company, to make a straightforward question here, SEG Engineering is involved obviously in different energy sectors. Can you please provide to our audience here a bit more overview what exactly you guys are doing?
Yes, thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you, and hi to everybody. Before answering your question, I would like to tell you and share my thoughts when I was listening to Carlos Vinograd, and he was telling us that Uruguayans and Argentinians were very different, but we didn't realize that. We don't realize that. Maybe I should have your advice, Carlos, 16 years ago when I got married with my Argentinian wife, but okay, maybe it's too late right now. So I would rather talk about say ingeniería, and maybe she's listening. Okay, our company is about 25 years old. We start as a classical energy service company. We did and we still do energy efficiency. But now we have about 4 sectors, 4 divisions. One is energy efficiency, still is the biggest one. The second one in time frame was renewable energies. Then we have another sector which is mostly advising and in contact with many other sectors related to e-mobility. And finally, we have a very small sector which is consultancy. It's a consultancy which is very small, but he uses the human resources of all the rest of the company to advise and do consultancy for like IDB, World Bank, I don't know, United Nations, countries or governments and so on, specifically about energy issues. This is about more or less, we are about 40 people. I'm also chemical engineer as Willy, so we are in every place. Okay, that's about a summary of my company.
Probably we could talk about those industries for more than an hour and could put a separate pattern on this. So let's try to be focused on a few highlights. Yeah, one of them is obviously that you are the largest developer for renewable energies within the LATAM region. So you have a bit of an overview. I mean, a great overview about this industry in the region. So which markets you see the most potential?
Well, it's in fact the market we see, or we saw most potential, because we started with those renewables projects maybe after Uruguay, ended his boom, his revolution. So we need, this is the one thing about what Carlos told us, that Uruguay is a small market, very stable. So the good thing of that is that most Uruguayan companies need to look outside Uruguay. So after this revolution, we looked for the region. And we started projects in Mexico, in Peru, in Colombia, in Argentina, in Chile, and in Brazil, also in Uruguay, obviously. Unfortunately, the two most promising countries and markets were Mexico and Argentina. Why? Big countries, Brazil as well, but similar, system or electrical market as Uruguay, or Mexico maybe not so similar, but Argentina is quite similar and very well known from us. And obviously we focus mostly on those countries. We have about 60% of our developments in Mexico, between Mexico and Argentina, and both countries are now doing not very good in terms of renewable energy. Let's say Mexico's government, López Obrador, is against the renewable energy, incredibly. It's hard to believe, but it's like that. And Argentina, we all know that the problems that Argentina is facing, and obviously, despite the energy is necessary and the energy is going always forward, is also affected and by COVID, and also affected by governmental decisions. So we are seeing and facing a very high challenge. To keep on doing things in Argentina, but we are still doing.
Perfect, thanks for that. And let's maybe switch to another industry that you mentioned already. As you're part of the electric mobility work group of the Uruguayan German Chamber, basically your company SEG is also leader in electric mobility, and serves automotive companies like Renault, Nissan, and others. Can you please elaborate a bit on this? It's of course a worldwide trend, but it's interesting to hear a bit more from an industry leader like you.
Yes, of course. Very short introduction and background. Uruguay is today, or for the last 3 or 4 years, we have been having 98% of our electricity is from renewable sources, basically hydro, wind, solar, and biomass. Okay, 98 average. That means for many passages of our days, we have 100% renewable electricity. But on the other hand, the general energy matrix, which includes transport and industry, is about 60% renewable. That means that we have, this is one situation, and we also have in some moments a surplus of renewable energy that we cannot use, so we need to export or we lose. So we have a great opportunity, and the country and the government knows that, to take advantage of this surplus energy to change, to go to the second energy transition, which is changing the transport and industry, but first transport, I assume, transport matrix and transport economy to the renewables. How to do that? Basically, two tools. One is batteries for short distances, trucks and utility cars and whatever, and maybe hydrogen, but as an electricity also engine for long distances. And this is something that Uruguay is going directly to. We are, the private sector and the public sector is working a lot on that thing, and the Uruguayan and German Chamber of Commerce and Industry is working, and we have a very special group working in that. And what we like to do from there is to facilitate and to coordinate the intentions and the ability of the private companies, mostly related to Germany, with the government, which wants but knows learn a lot still. So this is the articulation that we are doing, and it's getting fast, I think.
Excellent. That little car in the back on your left shoulder is an electric car already, or is it that one?
That one, yes. Well, it's not electric because it has an engine, but it's exactly the same as an electric one. It's sorry to please, Will, you don't need to hear that, and Barbara neither, but it's Chinese. Sorry.
That's also no surprise.
I can't. That's because Volkswagen didn't give me any present, but it's okay. I will.
Yeah,
I will wait a little bit.
We have the let emboss here next door sometimes, so I'll let him know. Then I will expect a little package from Brazil. Okay. Your company is based obviously in Montevideo. We heard about the perspective. I mean, you guys are very close, right? Obviously, the distances are a bit different than maybe in Brazil, Argentina. But is there any difference from the COVID situation to mention here in the city, when you're really in the city, based in the city, or is it from business perspective more or less the same that Billy already mentioned?
I would say that, well, in the numbers, the figures shows that the Montevideo and Rivera are the two hotspots, but it's like, let's say something like 100 people infected, no, in total today in Montevideo, which maybe there is a difference, but we don't notice that. In here internally in the company, despite we are always trying to, push people to use the mask and whatever, sometimes they relax a lot, and this is something that in Uruguay is happening. People in general, you see on the streets at the very beginning was very strict, and the people were, very locked down by self decision. But now I'm watching that people is relaxing a little bit. But from the point of view of the danger, is I would assume it's the same. We are it's like the same city, it's very near from here. So I would say from the COVID situation, we need to. My fear is that we are relaxing a little bit. The situation is country is under control. It's very good, but we need to be alert because we are surrounded by two giants, Argentina and Brazil, and they are quite complicated with the COVID situation. And we have with Brazil, we have a very weird situation, which is we share two cities, which is like you cross one step to the other street and it's Brazil, and you go back and it's Uruguay. So it's not a border.
Yeah, and my question was also because we have a similar setup in the region of Sao Paulo where I'm based. We have the production company a bit outside of the city, so in there it's a completely different world as far as COVID. Of course, the city here in Sao Paulo was a hotspot, but outside, a bit outside, where more or less the German production companies are based, it's much more a picture maybe similar like what you described in Uruguay. It's two worlds as far as COVID is concerned. But I understand you guys are even much closer, and the difference is both a good picture as far as COVID, which I'm happy to hear. Yeah. So now, as you also export knowledge and solutions in different markets, within the region, you mentioned already a bit about the renewable energy market potentials. Yeah. How do you see concretely Argentina, the complicated stumbling giants around you compared to your home market?
Okay, before I will add something about what you said. Uruguay is by definition, as I always say, is an empty country. So you cannot have COVID where you don't have people. So in the middle of the land, you don't have people in Uruguay. It's like this, you have cows. So obviously the danger could be in the city, but we are only 1.5 million. It's a very, very small city. So despite I also agree with Carlos that we are doing quite well, and the government is, and the people, adopted the measurement. We have luck because we are, and I love this panel because it's not only about energy, it's not only about industry, it's about life at the end, and everything is interconnected. Why? Because everything what was a disadvantage for Uruguay, I mean, a small market, empty country, and whatever for since I was born, I was always telling to my foreign friends, okay, Uruguay is very tiny, we need to look outside Uruguay. But in this moment, it's exactly the opposite. So we have a very big advantage to be empty country, okay, and to be, green, and we are about half the surface of Germany, and we have only 3.5 million. It's an empty country. So this is one point that nobody pointed out usually, but it's very important. And talking about Argentina, I will answer you very shortly. We have still something like 700 megawatts developed in Argentina. One is entering in operation very soon. Obviously, despite because of COVID, it was a little bit delayed. It's not ours. We sell our businesses to make the whole development and then sell the SPV at the end with all the rights and before construction. This is not ours, but we are always depending on successful to collect money and whatever. But we still have something like 600 or 700 megawatts under development in Argentina, and that means that you have people working there, not direct employees, but services. In services, we have still many wind measurement tower measuring right now in Argentina. You need to service those towers. We have also solar. So we trust that Argentina is going to be once again up. I don't know when, but this is something that when you start a project for the next 20 or 30 years, you need to know in Latin America that you will have such kind of back and forth situations. Okay.
Perfect. So you see the light at the end of the tunnel. That's good news. Yeah.
So we all need energy.
Yeah.
We all need energy.
Yeah. Good one. So I think that was an excellent Schlusswort, as we say in German, a good ending point for the overview, let's say general overview from the business perspective and German chamber perspective here from Willi and Fernando. Thanks very much. Now we would like to interact again. I give the hand over, hopefully, or the word to our Paul Ferry. Samiris, is it working now? Let's see.
Hopefully now you can hear me. Yes. Hello, everyone. Okay, so let's go for another poll question to know your thoughts. I will show in your screen in a bit. Let's launch. Okay, and the question now is, the relevance of Uruguay as a hub for South American business is, and for this one you have 5 alternatives, so you please may vote. Options are: is increasing because of COVID, is increasing due other factors, remains about the same, is decreasing because of COVID, or is decreasing due to other factors. We will wait until you vote. Thank you, by the way, for the participation. A lot of people are voting now. Okay, we're going to wait a little bit more until you have the majority of participants. And we have the winner already. I'm gonna show you. And the most chosen was, is increasing due to other factors. Perhaps, Willi, would you like to share some comment about the result?
Yeah, but it doesn't surprise me. Actually, I expected something like this. I think is, as you see, the poll is in thirds. I think it's between the same as a little bit higher. That I agree, and also I think that there are other factors, as I said when in my presentation. The other things that probably some things that we are doing good, as the energy that Fernando was explaining. Also other opportunities, as some things as as other business opportunities, and but the COVID is also something that have affected positively to the country. Once, because the people are able to come without risk, and people like to come to Uruguay, they like to be here, and they feel safe. But also, I think it's also the image of the country is like an image of a serious country that are doing the things correctly, and this also encourages investors to come. So I totally agree with this poll. I think it's a good view of the reality.
Thank you, Willi. Thank you very much. And Fernando, would you like to share also some comments? Are you surprised?
Okay, no, I'm not surprised. Once again, I would like to say that things are always interconnected. Okay, because we cannot see this as a consequence of the COVID only, but also COVID has a big influences. Our democracy, this is something good of Uruguay, is always, even if the color of the government is different, it has a common political idea in terms of Uruguay needs to export, to give a good image, to be natural and whatever. And COVID maybe is the last milestone of that way. And this is very important because first come image and then come the reality. So until now, I think COVID didn't change a lot our economics or the economics of the country yet, but maybe in the near future it will do. I don't know. For example, many people are telling that Argentina wants to come to Uruguay. There are many people asking things from Argentina to come to live in Uruguay, but in the reality, there are a few that already did that. Understand? So it takes time. I think COVID will help to to encourage Uruguay and to feed these images that Uruguay has along the years as a very strong democracy and strong economy. But it doesn't surprise me. I think it's both are very important, okay, in different moments.
Excellent, yeah, perfect. So we are already a bit above the time because we didn't really let it flow. Yeah, I think the contributions were just so interesting, especially of course always the business perspective and Professor Winograd, and we had really different perspectives. It was, I think, excellent overview. So we will cut our GPSA part that comes now with Martin Jepsen, starting with Martin Jepsen, a bit shorter, yeah, than expected, to then have some time still to take some questions because we received. Thanks for your participation also on the questions. We received some really interesting questions from the audience. We really would like to cover, yeah. So we have also still over 120 people listening in here. So the audience attendance rate is very high. So let's keep moving. Yeah, let's let it flow. let's be flexible. Now it's my honor to introduce Martin Jepsen. Actually, everybody that has to do with Argentina, yeah, knows Martin Jepsen. There's nothing. Actually, there's no need to introduce you. So I'll make it very short. Yeah, his professional service firm is of course very well established. Yeah, he's not only consulting the German business, yeah, but he's also, of course, part of our GPSA and a very strong member firm for Rödl and partner for many years, very trusted partner, yeah, and celebrating, that's important, his 50th anniversary now in March 21, yeah, Agenda 21 here, yeah, coming. So now, from that perspective, 50 years of doing business, yeah, in Argentina, yeah. Can you share maybe, would you do the same things again, like you started 50 years ago, or what is, let's say, the main lesson learned from your journey in Argentina?
Hello to everybody. Thank you for this question. To be very honest, in my next life, I will do exactly the same. Thinking about comprehensive economic and legal advice, trying to put both issues together from this first day on. And this is exactly what we are doing now for 49.5 years, to giving legal and economic advice to our foreign clients, mainly foreign investors in the different countries in Latin America. But I repeat, thank you for the question, because I will do exactly the same. The secret is to have a good team, good members, good partners, and know exactly which are the way you are looking for. You always have to look the light at the final of the tunnel, especially in Argentina. You know, we have a bright sun, we have an excellent country, but the tunnel is always there, and you have to look through. Otherwise, you will forget the country.
In that regard, what was your, let's say, your highlight in terms of professional frustration or success within the 50 years?
To be very humble, if we have to talk about success, we need a new webinar, because as you can imagine, we established over 600 legal entities in Latin America. 600. That's not one or two. 600. But I have one frustration with a German company. You know, they're quite good, and I will share it very briefly. It's the German company Nixdorf. Nixdorf was several years ago a great company for computers in Germany. It took us more than a year to incorporate the company, establish the legal entity, deal with the corresponding contracts, rent the office, recruit 25 IT members, 3 languages, Spanish, English, and German. And then 3 days before the official inauguration, the company was acquired by an important German group. I want to forget the name of this group. You can imagine it was a shock at that time, not with an email, it was with a fax, a very clean and typical German fax. Do what you can do. Thank you for your assistance. That was all. This was really a shock. But now I'm laughing. But at that time, you can imagine it was really a disaster. It was a disaster. But why not? It happened.
Perfect. Many thanks, to Martin, Dr. Martin Jepsen here in Buenos Aires. Let's switch here because of the time now, to Christian Elbert, our second trusted partner here, based also in Buenos Aires. He has a big CV, so I read out the highlights, to you. He's of course a lawyer representing Elsen law firm, also over 20 years of also advising, also partially German business. He has a strong German desk with his colleague, Mariella, and he's also a professor. You can see all the books behind him. At different universities, he holds different trusted positions at the German Chamber. He's a lawyer of trust at the German Embassy in Buenos Aires, and so forth. I think I could read on your CV, but then we would basically probably sit here a couple of hours more. So exactly, let's make it very straightforward. How do you see the local subsidiaries of international companies basically reacting to this scenario?
Thank you, Philip. I hope you can hear me well. I'm trying to be very brief. I'm a lawyer. That's what we do. We just do law, and I won't go in the macro aspects. I think what we can contribute in a few minutes is the daily practice, is what we see with our clients, which are subsidiaries. And what we're doing is something that was referred by Carl, was referred by Barbara, which is to assist in what is currently going on in Argentina, which is adapting. It's a daily exercise right now of adapting and being flexible, because you're getting, as a company, hits, let's say it like that. You're getting some bad news, some new challenge every day, and that you have to overcome. So that's an intimate, constant, I don't know, it's almost a call center like work that we're having with the clients, because you have safety regulations, you have COVID regulations. This impacts, of course, some provinces and others don't. You have import restrictions, export restrictions, but everything is on the move right now. So the first months of the lockdown were very intense. So what we did is join the clients in that effort, which is, keep the lights running, the lights going. And Barbara made that comment that there is some satisfaction that the business is still going on, and that's the main goal. So basically, it has been a day-to-day challenge, and we're expecting by the end of the year. Now the pace is slowing down, so not so many new regulations are being issued every day and impacting in a different manner the daily business. So companies are settling down, and now, as the great speakers have already analyzed, some bigger decisions are going to be made, and after that the companies are going to react more on a midterm basis, which in Argentina is a lot to say. But of course, big decisions on how to rationalize, how to adapt, etc. I think it's going to come on, based on the news after Christmas in Argentina and the starting of operations in March. I think between that period of time, companies are going to sit down and roll out the game plan for the coming 2 years.
Perfect. Define midterm in countries like Argentina and Brazil. But no, don't worry, that wasn't a question. I was just to compliment that. Yeah. Anyways, I could ask a lot of things like to Martin, but let's cut it short. One straightforward question to some specific interest of yours. I know that you're very interested in the startup scene, also tech companies. So how do you see the tech sector in Argentina affected in this scenario, and how they are dealing with the current restrictions?
Well, I think there are two aspects. One is has been referred to by Barbara also. Actually, COVID restrictions have been an incentive for many activities. Every company in every industry and service industry has had to go digital by force due to COVID. And that generated really an increase of opportunities and activities in, let's say, fintech sectors. Argentina has, even in this crisis, has placed itself as the third country in startups with fintechs, which is not, it's counterintuitive, like Fernando said. There's some things that you don't really can see as a natural consequence. Actually, I think tech business, health tech, fintech has e-commerce has went out of this crisis strengthened and is booming, even in this constrained situation and challenged situation to doing business. And as a segue to Horacio, many tech companies are in this discussion, a few times panelists have mentioned, this complementary lineup that exists historically between Argentina. Carl said that Argentina and Brazil, Argentina and Uruguay, of course, in the course of the history, we are really close countries. Mainly in the past, I think it was more for private investments, but now this whole hub for South American business is really growing as a thesis. And specifically, just to go to the point, to the tech business, I think Uruguay is going to be profiting quite a lot of, better environmental conditions for startups, for technology business in general. And they have been inspired by some good ideas in Argentina, but I think they are going to hold them up for quite more time. So what we're seeing is a new complementary lineup existing or growing right now, is tech companies that might want to get a company created in Uruguay to attend the Argentine market, just to say as a general idea, or to set up in Uruguay, to grow from Argentina to I can see that tendency growing every day.
Excellent. Yeah, I think it seems for me that you guys here will have more cross-border consultancy going on between Argentina and Uruguay for sure in the near future. Yeah. So we will hand over to the last speaker of today, representing our GPSA in Uruguay. Yeah, and I will make it very short for us. And we are the joker. We're keeping up the time. Yeah, to leave 10 more minutes for questions, because we have received really a very active audience participation. Yeah, it's still over 100 people, even if you're over the time watching us. Yeah, so we should really make it very concise. So Horacio, you need to introduce him, what he is, because he's the only one with a tie. So it means he's a notary public. Yeah, notary public always with a tie. Yeah, and he's of course also an Uruguayan lawyer, representing CSU, which is in Germany a political party, but in Uruguay a very established professional service firm, yeah, and basically focusing also on the German desk business, Swiss, of course, origin, yeah, of our dear founder colleague, yeah. Yeah, so first question to you would be, do you think the tax incentives approved by Uruguay are OECD compliant? Horacio, do you envisage any problems in the midterm with it?
Well, hello to everyone. Well, to answer that question, I think we have to put things into perspective a bit. First of all, Uruguay, in the last OECD peer review on exchange of information, has been qualified as largely compliant. And this has been so since the peer review of 2014. The last peer review is with information up to May 2020. So let's say it's not the optimal perfection, but it's more than okay. So from that point of view, any tax incentive approved by Uruguay, you can say that it complies with international standards, and there's no big discussion about that. Now, when you refer to new tax incentives, probably you are speaking about in the context of this Argentinian situation that my panel colleagues here have talked about. And here it's important to understand a couple of things. First, that as you may have already noticed, Argentina is doing a lot of things to freak out the wealthy individuals out of the country. Okay, if they haven't moved out yet, it's because of the COVID situation. They can't leave the country yet because they're not received in Uruguay or in other countries. But most of these wealthy individuals are running away or thinking about running away to a safer place. There is even a Bloomberg article on this phenomenon of last September, so it's common knowledge now, let's say. And the second thing to take into account here is that unlike what happened 18 years ago, where the Argentinians fled to Uruguay to acquire rural land and real estate with undeclared funds, in 2020, most of the taxpayers have their accounts in order. So it's not that they're going to hide their money in Uruguay while staying in Argentina. They don't have that possibility, and Uruguay is not receiving that kind of money from, I don't know, more than 10 years ago. So they have to move themselves outside the country, and of course Uruguay wants to bring them here. Even our president declared at the beginning of January that he wanted to bring 100,000 Argentinians into the country, which was probably an exaggeration, but it shows what is the intention of our government. So Uruguay approved two main tax incentives, which are first, to extend the tax holiday on foreign source income to 11 years. It used to be 6 years. Now for people who acquire the tax residency, it's 11. And the other thing is that we have a more flexible regime to acquire the tax residency just by spending 60 days in Uruguay and acquire a real estate of around $380,000 US. Of course, these measures are not aimed particularly or targeting the Argentinian people, but let's say Argentina is our most attentive audience on this. And somebody told me once that leaving your spouse and leaving your family and moving out of the country is the ultimate tax planning strategy. I don't know if you need to be that radical about it, but probably in the next months we will see more Argentinians, particularly, come to the country, and these new tax incentives will be also useful for Europeans. We've seen a lot of that, Germans and Swiss people retiring in Uruguay.
We got a comment from the audience on this one. It said your estimation might be even underestimation. He sees this trend also. One of the participants sees the trends also. And of course, in this uncertain, more and more uncertain world with this geopolitical tensions rising up, east, west, all that stuff that's going on there in the world, people looking for shelter place Uruguay seems to be a good option for considering as a shelter place, right?
Well, so, let's hope I'm horribly wrong and I underestimate the capacity of the country to receive people from abroad. Let's hope that's the case.
Yeah, I think you guys will soon be overcrowded, but okay. So that's
it will be the nightmare of Fernando, who likes to have an empty country.
Where now we start something rolling. No, this will flow. So now let's cut it into the Q&A. I would like to hand over to Tamiris to take some questions from the audience before we close down.
Great. So here's the first question sent from Stefan Vinegant. And he said, what could be a reason for an investment in Argentina, despite the hope it could get better? Who wants to take this question?
I think that relates to the other arguments made. Argentina has a lot of opportunities. Obviously, there are companies there, as it was said, that have been there for a long time, and it has strong comparative advantages in certain sectors. When the poll came up, and somebody commented on construction, for instance, construction will have an opportunity because the cost of construction, this is the counterpart of the exchange rate strong devaluation in the CCL, means in the free market, the cost of construction has sharply come down. So some people are looking at construction as a factory, in the sense that maybe the demand will not be immediately there, but the cost of producing the good is going down by one half or one third. Then the other thing that was mentioned is, if Argentina has good human capital in the sector, the unicorns, Argentina is by far the dominating force in unicorns in Latin America and among emerging markets taking off Asia, Southeast Asia, Korea, and the others, and Taiwan, and etc. So this strange combination of a very volatile place, but if you go for good and you invest in people, as Barbara Connor mentioned, there may be opportunities that go beyond the volatility of the cycle, because you can capture good human capital at relatively low international prices. And for this is not fixed capital, this is immaterial investment in people. So developing the service has a tremendous base, but obviously you need what was said, and I think that the key word, the magic word was said by Karl Moses at the beginning, when I sort of shocked with my macro discount rates that are there, is flexibility. So you have to adapt returns, like in emerging markets, but more so in Argentina. You exchange volatility for return, but you need a lot of flexibility, and you need the appropriate business culture. And there you have a bunch of people that have talked that are accompanying the company. So there are, and as I said, there are diverse opportunities in energy. In energy, you know that Argentina has one of the biggest, the second biggest gas in Vaca Muerta, that now for regulatory reasons, it will be disturbed. But again, there are strong opportunities. So what I mean is, you need a business culture adapted to detect those opportunities, and these opportunities are there, not only for people that already sunk the capital, because people that are already there 100 years, they already paid the cost of learning, they already paid the cost of investing and sunk a lot of capital. The question is, what about new people? In the case, I don't know if one can cross to the Uruguayan discussion, at the same time the other side of the river, and I think that COVID put into focus Uruguay. COVID, it may go, but the fact is, as Fernando said, sometimes you look at the film, you pay attention to the photography, you start paying attention to other things. This is a discussion I often had, and I was taught by Horacio. People start coming for one reason, and then they develop other branches of their business. So COVID put into effect that Uruguay could have a compact of private sector, civil society, institution, and public sector that can respond. And I agree with Fernando, density is low. There are a lot of advantages. There is not that many people, but still, you can see other Latin American cities of 2 million people, and they messed up. So I don't give too much over credit, don't over trust, but one has to recognize that a new government started in March, and 2 weeks later they seem to be lost, and they navigated the learning curve in a very interesting way. The other thing that I believe Uruguay is benefiting is that all across Latin America there is turbulence. Chile, that was the beauty of the region, is in turmoil. There is a lot of question marks on the political directions. Chile is very robust. Peru, a fast grower, is still very unstable politically. So Uruguay comes up as an interesting small place that has a stability that is in the region is lacking, but Is this enough? I don't believe so. I think that Uruguay has a big opportunity, but it has to choose it. The windows of opportunity don't appear all the time, and Uruguay needs reforms, needs to increase productivity, needs to improve. It's good, but needs to improve what was a very good educational sector. It has the capital, but this opportunity is there. It has the most difficult thing, which is institutions. This is a strange chemistry to construct. So I will stop here, and maybe then more questions will come.
Thank you very much, Carlos. And the next question is, why Germany does not take the decision to invest in Argentina, like China does? Who would you like to take this question?
Well, I would just a few questions. Why it says that? Because Germany invested in Argentina.
No,
many German companies invested in Argentina.
The question is more, I understand from the audience here, from Walter Bolea. He asked with capital letters, why it's not in a strategic, like China is strategically investing in South America, really. I mean, we know all over the place, very, very strategic. Germany is not so on the high priority. They were more focusing on China, other markets. So maybe Carl wants to take that one, right? So.
Yeah, I think that the German investment is competing with the Chinese in all the region, but especially in Argentina, I don't yet see so much investment from China, but I see a very, very large and intense historic presence of the German companies, and there may be not coming lots of more German investments, greenfield and from companies that have not been here already in the last time. But look at Volkswagen, look at Wintershall, look at some companies from the medical sector like B. Braun. B. Braun invested, we heard it in the Latin America talk from the Latin America Fine. They invested and they took their own money. They brought capital from Germany because in Argentina it's impossible to get financing in the place, and the discount rates are horrendous. So you have to bring your own cash, but it produces high margins, and there are a lot of German companies that are well aware of this, and it's not a dead market. Actually, we see movement, and we will see more, even when the perspective, the general perspective for the country is pretty bad, and we will see more mess, macroeconomic and political mess in the next 1 or 2 years. I'm very certain about it, but this is the point when you can go in and well, I don't know who is Costolani, the old guru from the financial markets, said you have to buy and invest when the guns are sounding. So don't forget about Argentina. You may cry about Argentina, but don't forget about it, because it's still there, will be there, and it's attractive. Just have to choose the right opportunity.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you very much. And as we still have a lot of audience, and because of the time, we will take 2 more questions, okay? And the next question is, we sell e-learning programs for automotive vocational education schools. Wait for public funding from Ministry of Education in Uruguay and Argentina. Will government come to rescue us? What do you think?
I think that in terms, talking about Uruguay, I think that these kind of programs of e-education are important to us, and it has been proven that during this time the education has been active across the country. So I think that now these kind of things will encourage the government to take more serious these kind of things, and I strongly believe that could be something interesting for us, for Uruguay, also because it's sort of a specific education and not so, let's say, as our French method of the global education. This is a specific kind of training is interesting for the country. I think this is part of what we need. So I think it's an interesting thing.
Maybe Tamiris.
Thank you. Sure, Barbara.
I complete on what Willie mentioned, because as a chamber, also in Uruguay and in Argentina, we are working with what in Germany is the dual vocational training, die duale Berufsausbildung, and we're doing this here in Argentina for more than 40 years, and very successfully. And it's not only for big German companies, but also we're working every year with new Argentine small and medium-sized companies, and it's about commercial careers, and it's about IT careers, and also the technical ones. So if you consider that there is 25% of all Argentine people younger than 24 years are without work and without education. So this is a very fertile ground. I think it's the only possibility also for a sustainable economic and social development for the country, for the whole region actually. But Argentina, it's very sad to say, but we have the largest youth unemployment rate in the whole region. So this is very sad on the one side, but a huge opportunity for companies and for us as an institution, obviously, on the other side.
Thank you, Barbara. And the last one, it's 2 questions in one. And it says, has Fernandez Kirchner government addressed Macri's market-friendly reforms towards the protectionist industrial policy of C. Kicillof times, or has it just limited itself to controlling the currency? And is it true, or is it a rumor that some companies are moving from Argentina to Uruguay? Who wants to take this question? Carl?
I don't know if I've got it exactly right, but the general orientation of the government from Alberto Fernandez and Cristina Kirchner, I said Cristina Kirchner is calling the shots from the background. So Alberto Fernandez is one thing. He's a president who would be he would like perhaps to make some more moderate policies, but he's hostage to the majority in his own coalition. So it's not only about the currency. Argentina has no currency, no proper currency, because nobody wants to have pesos. So the restrictions on the currency side, there's no way to avoid them for the time being. But this is affecting all the other parts of the economy, because you won't invest when you can't repatriate your capital and your profits afterwards. You can produce in Argentina when you don't get currency for your inputs, and if you don't get currency for your for imports, you can't participate in business in Argentina. So it all starts with the currency, which doesn't exist because the political environment doesn't inspire any confidence. These two things are totally interconnected. No confidence, no currency. So you have to have, you must have these restrictions for the time being. There's no way out. But it's always when there is a rule, Argentines always find some way to circumstance to find a way around to get in another way to the goal.
Roas, you want to add something?
Yes, regarding the rumor that Argentinian companies may be moving to Uruguay, I just wanted to say that in most cases it's not a convenience, it's a necessity. With all these crazy things happening to the exchange rates in Argentina, and some companies actually need to have a base in Uruguay, otherwise the business is no longer profitable anymore. They have to do it. And this has already happened 6 or 7 years ago, and it's happening now big time.
Martin, Christian, do you want to have a last word?
Yeah. May I add something to Horacio? Or in general terms, I concur with Carl. And I think it's a great phrase. You can cry about Argentina, but don't forget it. Just to put things in perspective for the audience, it's not that there is a massive fleeing of the country of the companies. It's that there might be, you might have to filter something out there. Some maybe the news are pitching maybe a situation that's not quite there. And I do concur with Horacio that some companies, and given their specific activities, are more prompt to consider opening some other offices in Uruguay to use maybe import-export facilities or something like that. But it's not that each and every company in Argentina is going to move to Argentina to Uruguay due to this crisis. We just discussed that big companies like Volkswagen, for example, and there are many others, are doing quite the opposite. They are reinforcing the investment. So there is a tendency, of course, there's an opportunity, yes, but the idea shouldn't be that every company is leaving Argentina to go to Uruguay, because I don't think that portrays the situation quite correctly.
Yes, Christian, I should have been more clear about it. You're right. It's some companies in some sectors that need to do this, and the other thing is that anything that is massive for Uruguay might be tiny for Argentina. Different economies and different situations. But you're right. Yes.
But let's not, don't cry for Argentina, but pray for it. So Martin Jepsen will close us down in prayer for Argentina. So the last word from you.
Some words at the end of this session is wait and see is the most appropriate decision in the time. Waiting for the Congress elections of October 2021. Which may significantly modify the political outlook of Argentina. I'm convinced it will be so. And the next webinar after the election, we'll see what happens.
Perfect ending words. So I will really just close it up. Yeah. So hope dies last. Yeah. This we have in common here as neighbor countries. Yeah. Thanks everybody for this invaluable insight. I think it was very informative. Yeah, I think this is first information from the countries. In this uncertain time, I think this kind of web conferences become more and more relevant. Yeah, this was the longest South America flight. We had the longest overdraft, but I think that shows also even now, even almost 100 listeners still. Yeah, it shows the interest in the discussion, which was very interactive, very good. Yeah, I think. The next event will bring us back to Brazil in November on a hot topic here about data protection and cybersecurity. That's also a huge topic currently. Please subscribe to our newsletter if you would like to receive our event invites. And please, before leaving, if you leave, you will receive a question for a survey. Please participate. This helps us to continue to improve. So far, we have really excellent ratings. So we hope today we could at least, despite the overdraft, keep the high standard of audience satisfaction. And yeah, I will not do a prayer, but I will say a big thank you to everybody again for your participation, and have a blessed afternoon or evening wherever you are. Thank you very much. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thanks all.